On this episode of the John1911 Podcast, hunting season is over, range work is completed, Blaser Tactical 2 barrels, and Commie lawyer gets her due. Okay, welcome back everybody. This is episode 279 of the John1911 Podcast. This is going to be a solo episode. Been a little busy around here, and Danny's been a little bit under the weather, and I want to get this out, so we'll go ahead and talk about some stuff that's going on around here and updates on some general things. So I guess the first thing I need to talk about, if you've noticed it on our social media, hunting season has come and gone. I mean, I guess technically there's still another week left, but we're basically done over at the John1911 range. We had Doc and Officer Mike out there, and I wouldn't say they were skunked. I would say that it was lean pickings. They had only bought buck tags, so they saw plenty of doe, but not a lot of buck. And I haven't run cameras this year to see what's going on with our buck situation. So, we had one small buck taken. It also appears Doc took him because he wanted him and, used him for meat because the day was about over. And so, but also the way the licenses are working around here, it appears that our DNR has switched from concentrating on knocking down the population with lots of doe tags to more focusing on shooting bucks, which tells me that they're either happy with the levels or they're trying to get the levels to increase, which, is pretty significant considering I remember where I used to hunt in this area, and we had a landowner, and I think the 1 year, I think he had courtesy possibly with his property. The DNR was allowing 13 does, deprivation does, which, holy smokes. So the reason why hunting season is of importance around here, not only is we have a lot of you that are interested in hunting, but hunting season does kind of shut down operations on the John1911 property because it's not fair to hunters to stink up the place. We don't really shoot. We could because they're hunting in back, but we don't run equipment or do a whole lot of things and let things cool off because we have a lot of hunters around us. And the deer, relatively speaking, if you think about the John1911 range, there's no way you would know this unless I told you, but the John1911 range is surrounded by farms. And one of the farms in particular has a fair amount of hunting pressure on it. So the deer transverse through our property coming up from some bottoms, coming up from the Ohio River, and, can move over into some of the neighboring farms to get to some of their crops, right? Makes sense. But a lot of them bed down and run for safety on our property because, relatively speaking, there's so little traffic and activity on our range. If we're shooting, we're up front, we're not in back. And even if we're there, even if we're in back doing stuff, we're in back for a few hours, but it could be 24 hours or many days before someone else comes back there. So if you think about relative to full-time working farms, our property is pretty pretty low key for the deer. So think of it like Switzerland in the middle of World War II, all the deer want to come to Switzerland. So we're in a unique position, but, it does affect our operations. And so we were rushing to get stuff done in the back of the property for the boys. And then now we finished some of the stuff up front. The rifle range work is basically completed, the backlog of work with the new tractor. So we've re-graveled the pistol pit. We've re-graveled the main shooting position, and we re-graveled the 100-yard shooting position. So we have 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 shooting positions that we can, from this one place. And we have pulled some of the old furniture and accoutrements out of these places, and we're going to reconfigure some stuff and burn some of the old stuff. And what this means is you're going to see a lot more rifle content, particularly precision rifle content, this winter, actually fairly soon, because we have a lot going on with that. So, this year was kind of rough with the rifle range because we had so many issues with equipment at the beginning of the year. Hence, we bought the tractor. I don't want to turn this into Marky talks about the Massey Ferguson tractor again, but we've been putting a lot of hours on a tractor, getting a lot of stuff caught up. So we're actually to the point with the range that we can start pushing into new projects and things we wanted to do to grow the range and add more targets and do all that. So that's a great place to be. We have never been in this position in 5 years. I think we've operated this range for 5 years. Maybe it's coming on 6, I'm not certain. Or it could be longer than that, but I know it's at least 5 years. So hunting season over, range work is completed, reconfigured all that. As far as projects around here at the John1911 Armory, we always have a lot of things going on. A lot of it we don't show, either because it's in progress and not worth showing, or we can't really show it. But we did some of the content we published. We resprung and tested the Cobray M11 ghetto gun from the 1980s, and that was fun. And that gun works as good as can be expected. We publish all that on our social media and on our website if you want to see the video, John1911.com. We have still working on a Benelli B76 respring. I'll tell you what, that got crazy. So we had ordered some replacement springs. The gun is undersprung. It's either the Benelli B76 is either undersprung or the springs in it are so shot out that it's functionally undersprung. But when we ordered the replacement spring kit, the first thing we ran into was the firing pin spring. The firing pin spring that turns out that's in our Benelli is nuts. There's no way it's an original spring or it's a factory spring. I don't know what the hell's going on with that. And the new spring goes in, and the way it's hard to describe, but the way the spring that came in the firing pin spring that came in the gun when we purchased it, the way that it fit in there is in no way like the replacement spring that we have. And it almost hit us like a ton of bricks, like, holy shit, this is fucked up. It's always been fucked up. We just never recognized how fucked up it was. So that's done. We are still working on trying to replace the main recoil spring. There's a what's it called? Little C clip. It's not an E clip. It's this little ring, like a snap. It's like a snap ring, but it doesn't have little ears to grab it. And we're trying to find the tool small enough to get this small snap ring off. And also what we figured out, the best way to probably remove this snap ring off of the recoil spring guide rod, because it's a full length guide rod, is to actually lock the gun open and do it while it's on the gun. Don't try to take it off when you field strip the gun. And that seems counterintuitive, but it's a learning process. We're trying to figure all that out. We've actually ruined a spring, so we're ordering some replacements, and so that's where that's at. So we'll have something to go on that soon, and I'm certain that gun will run NATO 124 ball great once we get it resprung. More in the future. Big news around here. Big news. We hinted around on it on social media. We've been holding this back for a while because we've been dealing with a lot of things. But we have in our possession aftermarket, brand new manufacturer, replacement barrels for the Blaser Tactical 2 rifles. Now, those of you in the Blaser game and the Tactical 2 game are probably jumping up for joy. The Blaser Tactical 2 barrels are unique to that system because of the size of the shank. I know if the words I'm using don't make sense to you, I'll get through the boring part soon. This is for the Blaser guys, so you can't use the Tactical 2 barrels on LRS2s, R93s, that kind of thing. The traditional Blaser Tactical 2 system would come with 4 barrels, which was 4 calibers, 5.56, 308, 300 Win Mag, 338 Lapua Mag. And that was done because it was configured for some law enforcement and military contracts. At the time that the RFPs went out for this, 338 Lapua Magnum was the hot shit round for the long range boys. And, Blaser did what they did. So these are these barrels are basically unobtainium. J-Sip and Sons. Yeah, J-Sip and Sons in here in the United States has been working on replacement aftermarket barrels for a while. They are making custom barrels for Blaser R93s, so you could use those on your LRS and LRS2 guns or R93 barrels, R93 guns. They are also making Blaser R8 barrels. Now, because of trademarks and nasty letters from Blaser. They can't call it R8 or R93. That goes kind of nomenclature. So because Blaser in their infinite wisdom doesn't want to do anything to help the aftermarket, and so their barrels can become popular in the United States, which is insane. Thank you, Germany. So anyway, J. Sip and Sons has they use their own in-house nomenclature. They're using some Greek letters. When you go to their website, you can see what they're doing. So, but they've been doing this for a little bit. The two barrels we have are brand new manufacture. They are nitrided. I'm going to warn you, it's not plasma nitriding. They are nitrided here in the United States. They are nitrided. They are threaded. They are heavyweight. I have not measured the twist rate on the barrels, but that won't be an issue. And I'm almost fairly certain that the barrels will obviously be a faster twist rate than a lot of what the German guys do. So this is going to be a major project. We're way farther ahead on this project than I'm saying here on the podcast. However, we can't really release stuff out of order. So as far as you're concerned, they're dropped on here today. We've had them for a while. So stay tuned if you're a Blaser guy and doing all that. Now, follow up on one more thing with the guns and stuff around the armory. We've had a number of people reach out to us, and if they have questions or issues or preference, asking us our opinions, preferences on the Wilson X9, X9L. They have the SFX guns. It's essentially the same gun. And so we've had some people kind of come in and be like, I don't want to bother you, but it's like, hey, you're not bothering us. Just if you're hearing this and you're interested in those guns, we are, I hate to be crude about it, but we're balls deep in those guns. That's the main gun that I shoot and that I carry and I train with. So we're supporting that, full bore over here. So if you have any questions about options or our opinions on stuff, but just understand that so far, I mean, we love the guns. We think they're fantastic and they're incredibly reliable, and the bang for the buck on them is really, really good. And there's occasionally some stuff out there that people don't quite understand as to why Wilson does what they do with these guns, and we're always willing to address that. We've actually we've noticed that a lot of people don't seem to understand why Wilson does their True Zero. Wilson has an in-house custom optics mounting plate that they do for their guns, right? So, Wilson, Bill personally isn't a big fan of red dots. We've all heard this. However, the market is red dot, so their opinion was if they're going to do a red dot, they're going to do it right. So if you look at a lot of guns with red dots, or especially guns that are cut after they've been manufactured, aftermarket, if they're cut for red dots, the engineering on how a lot of these red dots are mounted isn't really, it can be pretty sketchy. Having just some local machine shop, it's mounted in there and they got the screws. You really want to have a recoil lug. And so what Wilson has basically done is they have a plate system that they call their True Zero, and they fit the plate to the optic. And so they have it's a lug. It's a recoil lug. It's exactly what it is. And so it's not something where Wilson, hey, send me a plate and we'll do whatever. They like to fit them. So that way they don't beat themselves to death and they last a long time, which is the goal, right? It doesn't matter how rugged an optic is supposed to be if it starts beating itself to death because it isn't mounted properly on a slide, and you start stripping the mounting screws or Lord knows whatever else it does, you're not going to want to do that. So those are the kind of questions that come up, things about finishes, things about, spring changes and buffers, shock buffs, and all that kind of stuff. We love these guns. We have over 10,000 rounds through one, well over 10,000 rounds. We're just behind on publishing that. And so, yeah, you're not bothering us. You're not bothering anybody over here. If you want to talk about Wilson 1911s because we know quite a bit about them, or Blaser rifles because we know quite a bit about them, or guns in our reference collection. That's kind of why we publish it. So with all of that out of the way, last of the internal business, and I'm kind of going out on a limb here. So those of you that are regulars know that we have been playing around with the coffee mug thing. The technically Arctic Traveler mug, whatever they're called. They're coffee cups, right? These are coffee cups with handles. They're metal. And so the reason we're doing that, well, we ordered some for in-house. And the reason we're doing that is because we are opening up a store. We've had some problems and some delays getting our online store functioning correctly. And I have a little problem. Today is Monday, the 21st of November. This week is Thanksgiving, which means Friday is Black Friday and Monday is Cyber Monday. And I am desperately trying to get the John1911 store online so people can order mugs before a big crush comes in, for that holiday crush. Because, it's our first product since the new iteration from our Tactical T-shirts days, and things could go wrong. I don't expect them to go wrong. But, for speaking from experience, why a coffee mug? Because a coffee mug, you can't screw up a size. It doesn't, my coffee mug doesn't fit. Can I send it back? Or your coffee mug's made slim or, whatever. It doesn't fit right. Or, those kinds of things. Also, it's a hard item. It's not like, I got a coffee mug with a hole in it. Can I exchange it for one because it's got a hole in the seam or something? So coffee mugs are easy. We can deal with their problems. And so I'm going out on a limb telling you, I am hoping before Thanksgiving we can get the John1911 store online. And so how do you find a John1911 store? John1911.com is our website. That's how you know us. And if you go to the top of the website, you'll see an option in the menus that says store. And it doesn't work at the time that I'm recording this, but at some point this week, you could click that and it'll take you to a store. The store is a separate website. The website, web address, if you wanted to go to the store directly, which you can't right now because it's in maintenance mode, is John1911armory.com. That's all one word. God, I hope that's it. I'll have to check with the programmer. John1911armory.com. For you people in England or the United Kingdom that spell armory different, that's JOHN1911ARMORY.com. That's John1911armory. And that is where our store is. So a couple things in case someone's going to ask, like, why is it a separate website? Well, two reasons. Number one, and the primary reason, is back when we had the Tactical T-shirts days and we would sell, we would just get slammed. We were selling tons of stuff. If the store went down or was getting slammed, or for some reason with traffic, like with the Chris Kyle fundraiser, that was terrible. We had issues that first week. If the store goes down, it's hard to communicate with people what's going on. Hey, we're having some back-end server issues. We're trying to increase bandwidth, doing what we can. But if the damn website's down, I can't communicate that with you. And so you end up coming to the website and it's a broken error 403, whatever the error 5, whatever the internet error is when you go to a website and it's down. I don't want that to happen. So John1911 is our front-facing John1911.com is our front-facing page, website, not page, our front-facing website where we have content, commentary, podcast, pictures of the day, stuff we're shooting, stuff we're buying, stuff we're collecting, stuff we're arguing about. That's it. Now, the store is a separate website. Should the store need to go down, or I need to take the store offline, or if there's something that needs to be said or done, I can also put a post or a flag or a drop-down menu or a drop-down, nag screen. Hey, we're having problems with the website. The website's going to be offline or the store is going to be offline for the next 3 hours because we're restocking the store or something like that. So it looks more professional, and so we don't have these issues because we were so successful with Tactical T-shirts. I've learned some lessons. The second reason why I'm breaking up the store, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, is the rules with social media. And this should not come as a surprise to anybody. We are very seriously debating selling more than just shirts and mugs and that kind of stuff in our store. We would be a boutique business. We're considering firearms. We're considering Class 3 items. We're considering suppressors. We're considering at all kinds of accessories and accoutrements and that kind of stuff. But on social media, a lot of times there's a rule that says you can't link a social media website to a social media account to a website that sells firearms, right? So if you didn't know that, I'm telling you now. So we aren't doing that. You go to John1911.com. If we turns out let's say an estate sale, we buy somebody's Milsurp collection, because that's what we would be doing. We're not going to be carrying new stuff. You just go to the John 1911 Armory from our website, and you can find a list of whatever it is we're doing, and nobody can touch us or doesn't violate terms of service. So I really shouldn't be getting too much ahead of myself here, considering the store is literally not up right now, but it's going to be up imminently, and this is what's going on, and I don't think it's a big stretch for you to believe that we may consider selling collectible or unique or military surplus stuff, especially if we have to buy things. Sometimes when we're just like you, if you're a collector, sometimes we buy 2 or 3 things and we keep one for the collection, and the rest of them have to go down the road. So why not just put them on the website? So that's kind of the business model. We may not always have firearms for sale, but when we do, you will see videos on it, and we'll publish it and kind of go from there. In some industry news that I thought was interesting, and the idea of selling things, sometimes you see stuff and you're like, God, I wish I'd thought of that. This is an example of something I wish I'd thought of, and I saw it on the internet. I guess maybe it was the Firearms blog, not really certain, but it's a product called made by Ascalon, Ascalon Arms, Ascalon Arms, and it's called the Last Round Backstrap, and it's a backstrap, I guess, a CZ-P10. It says it's for the CZ-P10C, and I assume it all the P10s. But what it is it's got a little cutout in this replaceable backstrap that can hold a bullet, and it's one of those things where it's kind of useless, but every dude in their basement would buy one, and there's something to be said for that in America. And also, it's if you're responsible for security, or you're responsible for checkpoints or that kind of thing, not only do you have to watch out for guns and ammo and knives and taking stuff off of people, but you also have to be aware that maybe in a firearm situation, there could even though you've removed the ammo, you could find yourself in a place where there's still ammo on board that gun somewhere. And, while that doesn't really affect the average person that listens to this podcast, I do know people that literally go through training to find every surreptitious weapon or sneaky hidey thing, because they always have to be aware of how people get away with shit to try to hurt you or break the law. So I just like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, man, what a great idea. All them dudes would buy one. You could probably make them for... You definitely make it for HKVP9s because they have the removable backs. I think maybe the M&Ps. I don't know if there's enough room in there for a 9mm, but I was like, that's pretty cool. And I also know a couple groups that definitely this will definitely end up in their morning bulletin on FYI. Watch out for this kind of stuff. The next thing I want to talk about is something that I'm sure many of you don't pay attention to, and I haven't paid attention to it that much either. But I thought it was a good way to prove a point about the news and media and attention. So right now in Qatar, or Qatar, however you want to say it, is the World Cup. And in America, soccer isn't that big of a deal. I know people that listen or fans of soccer will disagree because all these kids play it. But you know what I'm saying from a professional standpoint, the amount of money that people make and all that kind of stuff. The World Cup, I don't even know if the World Cup happens every year or if it happens every 4 years or 2 years, how that even works. But it's like the champion of the world, and different countries vie for it like the Olympics. And this time it's in Qatar, Qatar, whatever you want to call it. And it's a big deal in the rest of the world. In America, it's like ho-hum, whatever. However, what I want you to understand is there's all these stories and all this drama apparently around the world talking about Qatar doesn't have a good human rights record, and all these celebrities that are being paid to go over there, or people being paid to go over there, or companies that are over there, like I think they were some alcohol company was going to sell beer at the last minute. The Qatari government said they can't sell beer, but now they have, somehow there's, all these tourists over there watching the games that are showing up drunk in public, which, drunk in public is not a Ron White joke. It's could be a big deal in Qatar. And, it's just all this drama and all this other kind of stuff. And apparently the person who, it was the MC of the opening ceremonies, who knew there was opening ceremonies of the World Cup, is Morgan Freeman. And, if you don't know who Morgan Freeman is, in the Shawshank Redemption, Andy Dufresne's friend that narrates the whole movie, that's Morgan Freeman, right? And so Morgan Freeman, I guess, got paid a lot of money to go over there, along with a lot of other celebrities. But in the world press and the UK press, Morgan Freeman is, quote, a disgraced actor and all this kind of drama. And I'm telling you that to give you an example of how in the United States, we will see stories in our media that we think are the center of the universe, that we think are the biggest thing to happen to planet Earth since the comet took out the dinosaurs. And the reality is, if you get off the networks and the usual suspects, of the same 9 news outlets in the United States, nobody gives a fuck about any of this stuff. Nobody cares about Morgan Freeman going over there, getting paid his big check to hang out with the special needs guy from Qatar for their opening games, right? And Morgan Freeman isn't going to be bothered about all this drama one bit. He's going to take that money, and he's going to fly home to America, and he's going to make Shawshank Redemption 2 or Driving Miss Daisy 4 and go on with his life. And, we're over there in the UK, or these foreign media outlets, they act like it's this, Morgan Freeman's done, and all these people are done. They're finished. And it's like, yeah, whatever. And so keep that in mind in dealing with the media in the United States, because people will say things that in the short term may be true, but actually long term they're not true. And we see that all the time in the U.S. media. And so a good example would be, I remember, and I'm using this to talk about politics. I'm talking about media, I'm talking about politics, but it's not going to be bad. So I remember when Donald Trump was president, and Donald Trump came out and said some stuff. And every time Donald Trump said something, Donald Trump, would talk about, he went over there and yelled about the Germans and their deal with natural gas, with the Russians. And everyone was like, oh my God, he's damaging our relationship with the Europeans. And then he complained about members of NATO not paying their fair share, because you're supposed to pay 2% of GDP for the mutual defense of NATO, and they're not doing it. And some countries even get away with it because they fudge their numbers. They include things that aren't really part of defense spending. Looking at you, United Kingdom, there's even Donald Trump, when during his presidency, during his presidency, they developed a COVID vaccine. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. And so, Donald Trump wanted to get rid of TikTok, and now, everyone's laughing at him. And now Mark Warner's come out, and all these people, TikTok is a national security threat. And, Donald Trump, they don't want to say Donald Trump is right, but maybe we should deal with TikTok. And then they talk about, I remember Donald Trump he had talked to his defense secretary and his joint chiefs of staff about the possibility of launching missile attacks against what I would call drug cartels, or transnational organized criminal organizations around the world that are bringing dope into the U.S. and killing thousands of Americans. And, this was leaked as this horrible thing. I can't believe Donald Trump's dealing, oh my God, he's so terrible. And now this is kind of becoming an accepted possibility in U.S., military and foreign policy circles. And then, the war in Ukraine, depending on who's in office and who's not in office, you'll have people on different sides trying to politicize the war in Ukraine. It's, here's a perfect example. So, and I'm gonna give some props to the Biden administration, and it's the administration, it's not Joe Biden that did this, but basically the U.S. government has handled the war in Ukraine with the Russians quite well. And I think we have to acknowledge that, even if I'm a Republican, and I don't like Joe Biden or generally what the commie Democrats do, but, I call balls and strikes fairly. So early on when this was happening, the U.S. government was releasing communications or analysis, up-to-the-date daily analysis about, Russia's going to come in, or Russia's going to do this, or Russia's going to do a false flag, or Russia's going to try to do that. And they were getting inside of the decision-making circle of the Kremlin, right? And this was causing all kinds of drama and angst and paranoia in the Russian military and Russian government. And that was effective. We've done a real good job with basically fucking with the Russians, on that front. If Donald Trump had been president and done that exact same thing, all you would have heard is everything would have flipped. The Democrats would be coming out saying that Donald Trump's a traitor. He is releasing our secrets. He's blowing our sources. He's putting lives of U.S. intelligence assets at stake. And, everything would change. But, because Biden's in office, it's crickets. But if Donald Trump had done it, this is what it would have been, right? And, you saw this with COVID. If whether neither here nor there, whether you take the vaccine or don't take the vaccine, or like the vaccine or don't like the vaccine, the reality is you're allowed to change your mind on the vaccine as you are with anything else as you get more information. But when Donald Trump was president and Pfizer had come out and said that we have a vaccine solution, this is a known fact. Supposedly, for medical purposes, we're doing this to save American lives and lives around the world. Pfizer slow-walked the announcement of the vaccine until after the election, like within a few days, to supposedly hurt Donald Trump. When the Republicans get in office, they all want to talk about Joe Biden, and they want to talk about Hunter and his crackhead son, and all that bullshit. I want to have that investigation. I want to have those subpoenas. I want Rand Paul talking to the people that were working at Pfizer and what did they know and when did they know it, and the decisions that were made at the tail end of the Trump administration in November of 2020 about when they were going to announce, possibly a vaccine of the greatest pandemic in 100 years, right? And so, you see this all the time in the news now. Like, look at Twitter, for example, all right? Twitter is this liberal left thing, cesspool of just terrible behavior. Even if it's terrible behavior, whether you're conservative, and I think it elicits bad behavior out of people. And it was when Elon Musk was outside of Twitter and was thinking about buying Twitter, the libs didn't want him to buy Twitter. They wanted to protect Twitter. They thought Twitter was the greatest thing, free speech, whatever. Now that Elon Musk owns Twitter, suddenly it's changed. They hate Twitter. They want to destroy Twitter. They hope Elon Musk doesn't succeed, which is basically wishing for Twitter to not succeed. Well, wait a minute. I thought Twitter was supposed to be such an important thing, 5 minutes ago. Now it's the worst thing. Now, if you're not sitting there listening to this or looking at these headlines or these talking heads and thinking to yourself, the fuck am I even listening to you assholes for? None of you, all of you are full of shit. You need to really reevaluate how you read the news and read and absorb media in 2022. But I digress. Let's not talk about any of that stuff. That's all kind of ugly. Let's talk about some good stuff here. So, from my hunting news, it is hunting season, and I have a story that falls under my hunting category. There was a British student visiting the U.S. who decided to go run up and take pictures or do whatever it is British students do to, get around 2,000-pound bison. And guess what happened? The bison gored this girl, flipped her in the air, and did all this stuff because, she's grown up her whole life watching Disney and Hollywood and thinking these wild animals have human characteristics and human logic and reasoning and compassion, and it about killed her because it cut some artery in her leg and all this other kind of stuff. And it's just like another example of how, people don't live in the real world. I wonder if there's a direct correlation between how much time this woman had spent, say, on Twitter versus her chances of being gored by bison, out in the western United States. But enough of that. So it's a pet peeve of mine, the Disneyification of wild animals. So, but I've gotten this from a couple of you, and I thought it was interesting. The Porsche has come out with a new 911 called the Dakar. Like, that's what I call it. It's a Safari 911, and I think that's cool. I think Safari 911s are really interesting. If you don't know what a Safari, take a 1911 and jack it up like a truck. Like, put big wheels on it and suspension would travel, and you could take it out and jump it or drive over curbs. I think it's I mean, like a cool car, like a sports car, like a Porsche, that you could go and I could take it to the John1911 range, drive to the back of the range. I mean, I wouldn't want to tear it up, but I could be a buyer of that. Am I gonna would we be a buyer at what, $250,000 at some limited run special car that none of these dudes will ever drive? No, we're not going to do that. But I do like that aftermarket Safari car. And the reason why Porsche has done this is because there has been so many companies like Singer and these aftermarket companies that do make what we call Safari conversions that, Porsche's like, hell, why shouldn't we make the money at that too? So get a factory one. So yeah, I think it's cool. I'm not going to buy one. I'd rather buy some machine guns, but that's kind of, where we're at. So we're at the end of this episode. It's not going to be a super long episode, and I want to go ahead and get in the police blotter because I'm going to give you a bonus round here. So normally we do 3, but I got a bonus one and I want to give it to you. So follow-up news out of New York City. This happened during the riots, the non-political riots that we had across the country, that had nothing to do with politics, to affect the outcome of an election, right? Just freedom to riot, right? Freedom to destroy. New York City, these little commie lawyers were arrested, and they were shocked because they were special. They were like high-end Wall Street, whatever lawyers, and or Ivy League lawyers, and they got busted firebombing cars in New York City. Well, the first one, this girl, she's of Indian descent, native or subcontinent Indian, and she was been disbarred, which surprised me, and she got 15 months in federal prison, I believe. So we'll see if she does 15. If it is federal, she'll do 80 or 85%. That's kind of how it works. But she's disbarred, and then she had to pay a fine too. But we'll see long term if in New York she stays disbarred. Fun fact: the lawyer that worked for the Justice Department or the FBI that had actually altered emails to justify a warrant. I think it was a warrant on Donald Trump, or might have been against Carter Page. But for FISA court, he was charged and with a felony, convicted. He pled, and he was disbarred. He got his license back. It was real quiet. I don't know, 6-8 months ago, he got his license back. So he's a convicted felon. He can practice law. So how cool is that? Good for him. In other news that was sent here out of Ohio, sent to me a couple of you. Upstate Ohio, 40,000 minks from a mink farm, I don't know what the hell that is, were released when eco-terrorists showed up at this place and, sabotaged it, and all these mink got away. And so, the last I heard, police say there's at least 10,000 minks still on the run. And you got to ask yourself at this point, like, at what point does that make the mink a very viable species for Ohio long term, and maybe if we even have like a mink season? I've never seen a mink, not here in southern Ohio, so maybe I don't know, like in 10 years, am I going to see mink on the John1911 range? I think it's very possible. So, another story out of Texas. This would be our traditional third one. This is out of Texas, as I said. There's video of a guy, and he hang drops off a highway overpass, and he get onto a tractor trailer on the highway that's going by, and he starts dancing and gyrating and doing whatever. And I think people are thinking he might have been making a YouTube video or a Facebook video. and he apparently forgot to look that there was another overpass coming, and on video, he got knocked off that truck with full overpass at 55 miles or whatever the speed was, and he was a mess when people were going by. So I just thought, was at the Darwin Awards. I just thought that was. I'm still looking for the unedited video. So if you can show me the unedited video of the guy from that got knocked off the truck from the highway overpass, please send it to me. I know that sounds uncouth, and not that I would normally want to watch that kind of stuff, but I do miss the really, like, I mean, who doesn't like a really good dash cam, right? And this is one I'm like, yeah, I want to see this one. I want to see what happens to the dude, because I just do. So don't think less of me, but I just want to see what happens to him. And the bonus episode, or the bonus story, comes out of the Cincinnati area, and it's kind of a commentary on how things are going around here with just around the country. But in a suburb of Cincinnati called Mount Healthy, Ohio, there's a boxing club, and there was a boxing tournament match going on, and I think it was women's boxing, and a big fight breaks out, I think in a parking lot. And when it was all said and done, shots were fired. Investigating police say 10 people armed with guns were shooting at each other in this parking lot. There were 10 shooters in this parking lot at this place. And if that is not a commentary of how things are out of control with crime in this country, I don't know what is. I mean, that makes the OK Corral look like a joke, because all these dudes these dudes weren't firing, single shot, or break open, double barrel shotguns at each other, or six shooters. I mean, they were shooting automatic, semi-automatic weapons. So, I hope a certain group in this country, the no bail and, rights for criminals, more rights than criminals for criminals and victims crowd, is real proud of themselves. So, well, this wraps up episode 279 of the John1911 Podcast. If you want to see more stories or pictures or links, please go to the website at John1911.com. That's JOHN1911.com. Remember, it's all about shooting guns and having fun. Everybody, have a good day.